As the heavy oak doors of the academy swung open, a collection of fluttering butterflies filled the air, giving way to a world steeped in grandeur. The towering spires of the academy reached for the heavens, their intricate carvings and ethereal glow through the ancient windows hinting at the arcane knowledge held within. Through the opulent corridors, lined with the old tapestries depicting ancient battles and legendary creatures, where students emerged into a sprawling courtyard. Beyond the courtyard lay the mystical highlands, cloaked in an otherworldly mist that whispered of days gone by. A winding pathway carved into the ancient stone of the cliffs beckoned, leading towards a realm of enchantment. As the students ventured forth, they strained up hills higher than the eyes could see. At the end of the path that stretched through the darkest depths of the valley below the academy walls, the veil of mystery parted to reveal an open arena. The ground voice emerged with latent energy, and at the center stood Professor Shadowspear, a figure of untold wisdom. His presence commanded attention, and his eyes, gleaming with a dark, solitary past, surveyed the approaching students. Professor Shadowspear's voice resonated through the magical arena, each word laden with the weight of ancient wisdom. Welcome to the Trial of Shadows, named accordingly by myself, of course. Today, we test not only your knowledge of spells, but also your strength and ability to defend against the unknown. Gesturing towards the center of the arena, he explained, "In this trial, one of you will cast a formidable curse, while the other must prove their prowess by deflecting it. This challenge goes beyond incantations and wand movements. It delves into the essence of your magical instincts." The professor's eyes scanned the crowd until they settled on Riley and Anne, who stood opposite one another, both of them trying hard to meet the professor's line of sight. "Riley and Anne, step forward," he commanded. As they approached, Professor Shadowspear continued with an undermining tone, "Riley, you will be casting the curse, not that you have any idea what you're doing. Anne, your task is to defend against it if it's even possible that it gets cast at all. The success or failure of this trial rests upon both of you. Should the curse be cast without a proper defense, it means the opponent will inevitably be harmed. If you refuse to cast it at all, that responsibility falls upon the dorm as a whole, and I will see to it that you'll be doing extracurricular activities with me for the rest of this month. Are we clear?" Anne's heart quickened as she overheard two students huffing and puffing and giving her an evil look. Her well-being now relies heavily on what Riley will do, and a mixture of determination and unease flashed in her eyes. The professor's words echoed in her mind, emphasizing the potential consequences. The arena was suddenly filled with murmurs of dissent as students began to heckle Professor Shadowspear. Books flew through the air in a chaotic display of rebellion, protesting against the perilous nature of the trial unfolding before them. It seemed as if a storm of disapproval threatened to disrupt the carefully orchestrated test. In response, the professor's voice, deep and resonant like a monster's cry, cut through the tumultuous noise. Silence. The single word carried a power that demanded instant obedience. The chaotic air settled, and a hush fell over the defiant students. With an unwavering gaze, Professor Shadowspear approached Anne and Riley. As Professor Shadowspear commanded Anne to get into a fighting stance to defend herself against him, the air was whipped by the professor's skill. His harsh tone cut through the stillness as his delicate jet onyx wand flew into action. "Agonisha!" he yelled as he relentlessly hurled a myriad of curses towards her. Anne, uncertainty etched across her face, raised her wand in desperate attempts to deflect the onslaught. The professor, undeterred, continued his assault. Each curse unleashed seemed more formidable than the last, testing Anne's magical prowess to its limits. The students, gripped by a mixture of awe and unease, observed the unfolding spectacle with bated breath. Professor Shadowspear, walking forward with deliberate intent, seemed determined to push Anne beyond her limits. His eyes bore into hers, a silent challenge urging her to tap into unknown reserves of strength. Anne, driven by instinct, found herself deflecting the curses into the sky with a flick of her wand. The ethereal display of magic painted the arena with bursts of light and color like miniature fireworks. However, as the professor cast the final spell, a potent and dark incantation called Terralium, Anne faltered. The weight of the impending curse seemed too much for her to bear. Her defenses wavered, and she stared at the oncoming magical line like electricity, coming towards her with a mixture of fear and dread. As the final curse surged toward Anne, a wave of panic swept over her. Time seemed to slow as her wand trembled in her hand, unable to repel the impending darkness. The weight of the professor's relentless command bore down on her, and just as despair threatened to consume her, Riley leapt into action. In an instant, Riley positioned himself between Anne and the oncoming curse, his wand raised with a determination that mirrored the fierce protection in his eyes. The professor's voice screamed out with intensity as Riley's defenses met the dark magic head-on. A blinding flash enveloped them, obscuring the details of their struggle from the onlookers. From Anne's perspective, the moment was a maelstrom of magical energy. She felt an invisible force coursing through Riley like a lightning bolt, channeling the raw power of his defiance against the dark incantation. The ground beneath them rumbled, and a low, ominous quake resonated through the earth. It was as if the very soil beneath them responded to the clash of opposing forces, echoing the magnitude of the magical conflict. As Riley held his ground, a surge of brilliance emanated from his wand, creating an ethereal spectacle that danced through the air like luminous tendrils. The magical energy, now transformed into a radiant display, seemed to crest like a wave before dissipating into the soil below. The rumbling quake reached its crescendo, and just as Anne feared the consequences of such a powerful clash, Riley hit the deck. His form crumpled, and a momentary silence settled over the arena, as if nature itself paused to acknowledge the sacrifice he made to protect Anne. Professor Shadowspear looks on at the scene from his podium of darkness with a hint of concern. In that stillness, Anne rushed to Riley's side, her heart pounding with the thought of Riley not waking up to her voice. The professor, observing the aftermath with an inscrutable gaze, seemed to assess the unforeseen consequences of Riley's daring act. The students, once rebellious and uncertain, now stood in a collective stare towards the professor that spoke volumes and warned him to not take a step further. The trial of shadows had transformed from a test of individual prowess to a collective spectacle, leaving everyone with an unspoken realization that the magic within them held both peril and promise. The ramifications of Riley's sacrifice and the ensuing quake resonated through the academy, echoing the complexities of the mystical world they had chosen to navigate together. As Professor Shadowspear observed the aftermath of the magical clash, a flicker of fear crept into his mind. Amid the residual brilliance, he noticed a beautiful, otherworldly light piercing through the darkness of the pathway leading back towards the academy. Intrigued, yet apprehensive, he couldn't shake the sense that he was being watched. As he approached the glowing pathway, a myriad of thoughts raced through Professor Shadowspear's mind. Doubt and anxiety mingled with a faint curiosity, creating a tumultuous storm of emotions. What lay beyond the radiant glow? Was it a manifestation of the magical energies unleashed during the trial of shadows, or did it portend something far more profound? With each step towards the mysterious light, The professor grappled with a sense of foreboding. The air seemed charged with an anticipatory energy, leaving him torn between the responsibilities of his role and the enigma unfolding before him. What? The radiant glow intensifies, casting intricate patterns of illumination upon the cobblestone path. As Professor Shadowspear neared the source of the light, a figure emerged from the brilliance. It was Headmistress Althalia, her presence commanding respect and authority. A momentary silence hung in the air as the two wizards exchanged glances. Professor Shadowspear, his demeanor respectful but tinged with a hint of trepidation, greeted the headmistress. "Headmistress Althalia," he acknowledged with a bow. The headmistress, her expression a delicate blend of curiosity and expectation, spoke with a voice that resonated with wisdom. "Shadowspear, what transpires here? I sensed a disturbance in the magical currents." With a deep breath, Professor Shadowspear began to explain the unforeseen events of the Trial of Shadows, detailing the rebellious student reactions, the unexpected twist involving Riley, and the subsequent quake that echoed through the earth. As he spoke, the headmistress listened attentively, her gaze unwavering. Headmistress Althalia regarded Professor Shadowspear with a piercing glance, her eyes betraying a depth of knowledge that reached beyond the immediate events of the Trial of Shadows. Shadowspear, though seasoned in the magical arts, found himself under the scrutiny of a leader who perceived more than mere magical phenomena. "Shadowspear, your explanations weave many mysteries as usual, but I sense there are threads you withhold," the headmistress remarked, her voice carrying the weight of experience. "Do not forget, I know your past, and there are truths even the most skilled sorcerer cannot conceal from me." Professor Shadowspear, beads of sweat forming on his forehead, took a deep breath. "Headmistress, the trials were meant to challenge the students, to prepare them for the unpredictability of the magical world. The quake, an unintended consequence, was a manifestation of the students' raw power, their untapped potential." Althalia, unmoved, studied him with a discerning eye. "You speak many half-truths as usual." Professor Shadowspear, beads of sweat forming on his forehead, took a deep breath. "Headmistress, the trials were meant to challenge the students, to prepare them for the unpredictability of the magical world. The quake, an unintended consequence, was a manifestation of the students' raw power, their untapped potential." Althalia, unmoved, studied him with a discerning eye. "You speak in riddles, Shadowspear. Beneath the layers of your words lies a truth you hesitate to reveal. Do not insult my intelligence with lies." A moment of silence lingered between them before Shadowspear, realizing the futility of evasion, spoke with a hint of reluctance. "The trials were designed to awaken latent abilities within the students. The quake was an unforeseen consequence, a resonance of my past experiments with the magical ley lines beneath the academy." The headmistress's expression tightened, her features betraying a mixture of disappointment and concern. "Your past experiments? You risk the very foundation of this institution with your unbridled ambitions. The safety of our students should be paramount, not your pathetic ego." Shadowspear, feeling the shadow of those words, bowed his head. "I sought to unlock the dormant potential within the new students, but I miscalculated. The trials were meant to correct that, to guide the students through controlled experiences." Althalia, her disappointment now transformed into stern resolve, made her way towards the arena. "Your actions, Shadowspear, have consequences. The trials end now. You hear me." As she approached the center of the arena, Althalia raised her wand, and a wave of authoritative magic emanated from her. The trials dissolved, leaving behind traces of residual energy. The students, previously scowling towards the professor, now watched as the headmistress asserted her authority. Althalia pushed back a few of the students from Riley's body, took his limp and cold hand into hers as she knelt down beside him softly. "Could you all step away, please?" Her voice cracked as she looked down towards him, feeling a surge of sorrow pass through her. In a moment, the arena grew heavy with the pain that Anne felt as she knelt beside Riley's motionless form, her hands trembling as she gently cradled his still body. Tears blurred her vision as she whispered words of desperate encouragement, her heart pounding with fear and anguish. Every fiber of her being screamed for him to wake up, to breathe, to come back to them. Headmistress Althalia stood beside them, her usually composed demeanor shattered by the sight before her. Her expression was a mask of sorrow and guilt as she watched over Riley, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. With a heavy heart, she knew that time was of the essence, that they could not afford to lose another precious life under her watch to the darkness that Shadowspear sometimes dealt with. Gathering her resolve, Headmistress Althalia leaned down, her breath mingling with the magic that swirled within her. With a whispered incantation, she summoned forth the very essence of life itself, channeling it through the conduit of her own being. The magic danced upon her lips, shimmering with an ethereal light as it flowed from her mouth and into Riley's still form. For a heart-stopping moment, the world seemed to hold its breath as the magic took hold, weaving its way through Riley's body like a thread of hope. And then, with a gasp that shattered the silence, Riley's eyes flew open, the spark of life returning to his gaze as he drew in a deep breath and started to cough. Relief flooded through Anne as she hugged him close into her chest. Ethan's tears of gratitude streamed down his cheeks as he watched Riley stir. The weight of fear and uncertainty lifted from all their shoulders, replaced by a flood of overwhelming emotion at the miracle before them. But even as Riley blinked back to consciousness, the memory of his lifeless form lingered like a shadow in their hearts, a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the darkness that threatened to consume them all. And as they gathered around him, offering silent prayers of thanks, they knew that their battle was far from over, that the shadows would continue to test their resolve at every turn. But for now, in this fleeting moment of triumph, they found solace in the simple miracle of Riley's breath, a testament to the enduring power of hope in the face of despair. As Althalia passed Shadowspear on her way back to the academy with the students in tow, she cast a final glance at him. Her words, like a dagger, cut through him. "I wish that body had been yours, Shadowspear. Maybe I would just have left you there in that sorry state. Mark my words, this isn't over." With that, she departed, leaving Shadowspear to reflect on the consequences of his actions and the potential fracture in the trust he had painstakingly built. In the midst of the explanation, Professor Shadowspear couldn't help but wonder about the repercussions of the trial and the impact it might have on the delicate balance that he always sought after. The radiant light that had drawn him toward Headmistress Althalia now seemed to symbolize both enlightenment and the potential for him being watched every move he makes. In a ripple and flash of light from his residual magic, Professor Shadowspear, accepting the consequences of his actions, summoned a portal that enveloped him in ethereal energy. With a ripple of otherworldly brilliance, he evaporated from the academy grounds, leaving behind the lingering echoes of the Trial of Shadows. In an instant, Shadowspear materialized outside a quaint mystical pub, its weathered sign swinging gently in the magical breeze. Peering through the fogged-up window, he surveyed the eclectic crowd within. A diverse array of beings, from wizards and witches to creatures of law, populated the dimly lit establishment. At the bar, a grizzled centaur sipped a potion while engaged in conversation with a mischievous-looking gnome. A pair of fairies fluttered around a table, engaged in a heated discussion about the latest magical trends. Shadowspear's gaze wandered, taking in the vibrant tapestry of magical life that unfolded within the pub. However, as his eyes scanned the room, they came to rest on a dimly lit corner where Pemblewink, the eccentric cat creature, sat. Shadowspear's instincts kicked in as he noticed a hooded figure seated opposite Pemblewink, engaged in a deep conversation. Realizing the need to lay low, Shadowspear decided to bide his time and observe. Pemblewink, with his distinctive hat adorned with colorful feathers, seemed unaware of Shadowspear's presence. The hooded figure, veiled in mystery, leaned in as they shared secrets unknown. Shadowspear, concealing himself in the shadows outside the pub, waited patiently. The pub's enchanted door creaked open, welcoming a new wave of patrons, while Shadowspear kept his focus on Pemblewink and his companion. As the minutes passed, the atmosphere inside the pub remained lively, with laughter and magical conversations blending into a harmonious symphony. Shadowspear, hidden from view, watched intently, aware that Pemblewink's departure could provide him with an opportunity to gather information without drawing attention to himself. The hooded figure and Pemblewink continued their discussion, occasionally gesturing with animated expressions. Shadowspear, recognizing the need for caution, decided to remain in the shadows until the right moment presented itself. As the evening unfolded in the mystical pub, Pemblewink concluded his drink, draining the last drop from his peculiar goblet. The hooded figure, their identity still obscured, extended a claw-like hand over the worn wooden table, passing a handful of coins to the cat. The exchange, executed with a silent understanding, seemed to carry the weight of a transaction veiled in secrecy. Pemblewink, feeling a sense of accomplishment, gathered the money with a mischievous grin. The hooded figure nodded subtly, and with a brisk bounce to his step, Pemblewink exited the pub into the magical night. Shadowspear, who had been biding his time in the shadows, readied himself for the confrontation he deemed necessary. As Pemblewink stepped into the cool air outside the pub, a feeling of pride emanated from him. The smirk on his face hinted at the success of his clandestine dealings. Shadowspear, determined to unveil the truth, swiftly emerged from the shadows, forcefully grabbing Pemblewink by the collar and throwing him into a nearby alleyway beside the pub. The narrow alley, shrouded in darkness, became the stage for the confrontation between the two magical beings. Shadowspear's gaze bore into Pemblewink, his eyes flashing with a mix of anger and determination. Pemblewink, now sprawled on the cobblestone ground, looked up with a mixture of surprise and defiance. "To think that I was only looking for a brew, and instead I found you." Shadowspear's voice, low and threatening, echoed through the confined space. "I need answers. Who was that hooded figure you were meeting inside?" Pemblewink, attempting to regain his composure, chuckled nervously. "Ah, Shadowspear, my old friend. What brings you to this lovely part of town?" Shadowspear tightened his grip on Pemblewink's collar, his patience wearing thin. "Enough games, Pemblewink. I demand the truth. Who was with you in the pub, and what business do you have that creature?" Pemblewink's smirk faded, replaced by a glimmer of uncertainty. All right. No need to get all grabby. The hooded figure is a contact, a dealer of magical artifacts. We were discussing a transaction. Apparently he has something extremely valuable that could gain me a lot of popularity if I was to come into its possession. You're not after it, at you? I swear I won't go after it if you need it. Shadowspear's eyes narrowed as he processed the information. Magical artifacts? You understand what this means, don't you? It could be the one that threatens the Academy, you bumbling idiot. Pemblewink, realizing the gravity of the situation, sighed. It's just business, Shadowspear. Nothing that concerns you. Besides, I have to make a living somehow. Shadowspear, unsatisfied with the vague response, leaned in, his voice lowering to a menacing tone. I suggest you start being more cooperative with me, Pemblewink. Tell me everything, or the consequences will be more severe than a mere confrontation in this alley. As Shadowspear awaited Pemblewink's response, the narrow alleyway echoed with the tension of secrets unraveling, casting shadows on the delicate balance between magical dealings and the consequences that unfolded in the mystic realms beyond. As Pemblewink and Shadowspear continued their tense exchange in the narrow alley, the shadowy figure lingered, unseen and unheard, thanks to a stealthy spell that veiled him in an invisible shroud. From his hidden vantage point, he observed the confrontation, listening to their words and unraveling the layers of secrets. Shadowspear, his grip still firm on Pemblewink's collar, demanded more answers. That artifact is protected for a reason, and your involvement raises more questions than answers. How did you come to know of this stranger? Pemblewink, dusting off his robe, shot a cautious glance at Shadowspear. I am not sure you'll like to hear what I have to say, but here goes nothing. I unearthed many things about the prophecy linked to the relic from moons ago, the power that it has over others. That kind of power is so valuable. I couldn't pass up that opportunity. One day I overheard someone talking about it with a goblin, so I went over and listened in. I got caught, and here we are now. That shadowy guy knows a lot about it. I said I would work with him if I got half of the money now, and the rest is history. He said to me that those twins, their blood, that's the key. So I used my charm on them too, just to win them over. As Pemblewink boasted, the shadowy figure circled around them, absorbing the unfolding drama. Shadowspear's gaze never wavered as he pressed for more information. You do not need to say any more. I know who you are conversing with, and I am inclined to smite you for being so utterly useless. Pemblewink hesitated before responding. The hooded figure is an old friend, just like you, Shadowspear. He offered me a cut for obtaining the artifact. It's nothing more than business. Shadowspear's expression hardened, memories of a past shrouded in deception surfacing. That hooded figure was once my friend too, but I knew him under a different name at the academy. He was someone I trusted with everything, and I swore to protect, someone I did unspeakable things to shield away from the darkness of this world. As Shadowspear spoke, the shadowy figure strained to hear every word, absorbing the revelation. The invisible shroud allowed him to weave around them, undetected, catching fragments of a story that connected the present to a dark past. Pemblewink, sensing the gravity of Shadowspear's words, raised an eyebrow. Protect him from what, Shadowspear? He can definitely hold his own. Shadowspear's eyes held a haunted look as he confessed, I tried to save him from the consequences of his actions at the academy. I did my best by him, and he threw it in my face by saying to Althalia it was my plan. But in the end, it was futile. They saw through him. He betrayed me, and his true nature surfaced despite my efforts to conceal it from them all. The shadowy figure, his unseen presence lingering, felt the weight of Shadowspear's words. The invisible shroud shielded him as he circled, eavesdropping on a conversation that unraveled a complex history between Shadowspear, Pemblewink, and the hooded figure. As the dialogue continued, Shadowspear's revelation hinted at a deeper betrayal, one that divided his friend from the past and himself, something that spoke of a man downtrodden by another's deceit. The shadowy figure, hidden from view, absorbed the secrets that intertwined the past and present, casting an enigmatic shadow over the mystical realm that echoed with the tellings of old friendships shattered by deception. Pemblewink squared his shoulders, his gaze unwavering as he addressed Shadowspear with a mixture of sternness and compassion. You may think you're all surface, Shadowspear, but we've seen glimpses of the depths you're capable of. Your pain may not be on display like ours, but that doesn't make it any less real. You've shown us that beneath that tough exterior lies a heart that feels just as deeply as the rest of us. Don't ever forget that. Shadowspear's eyes flashed with a tumultuous storm of emotion as he turned to face Pemblewink, his voice thick with pent-up frustration and anguish. You think you know me? Well, you don't have a clue. You don't know the darkness that lurks within me, the demons I battle every day. Don't presume to understand who I am, because I know you're still trying to understand who you are. As their words hung between them, a stark reminder of the complexities that lay beneath the surface of each individual. In that moment, they stood on the precipice of understanding, their paths intertwined by the shared struggle of navigating the depths of their own feelings. The shadowy figure, his unseen presence lingering, felt nothing towards the pain Shadowspear felt. The invisible shroud shielded him as he circled, eavesdropping on a conversation that unraveled a complex history between Shadowspear, Pemblewink, and the hooded figure. As the dialogue continued, Shadowspear's revelation hinted at a deeper betrayal, one that divided his friend from the past and himself, something that spoke of a man downtrodden by another's deceit. The shadowy figure, hidden from view, absorbed the secrets that intertwined the past and present, casting an enigmatic shadow over the mystical realm that echoed with the tellings of old friendships shattered by deception.